The emergency beacon cut through space like a scream. It reached every corner of the galaxy, bouncing off space stations and alien communication networks. The message was simple, but desperate. The Zephyrian coalition was dying. Ambassador Kelthon stood before the massive viewing screen in the coalition's last command center. His blue skin had turned pale with fear. Behind him, representatives from 6 other alien species watched the same terrible sight. Outside, the Devourers moved like a black tide across their home system. The creatures were bigger than mountains. Their metal bodies gleamed with organic parts that pulsed and writhed. They had no mercy. They consumed everything. Planets, moons, space stations, even the stars themselves fed their endless hunger. The coalition had fought them for 3 years. They had lost every major battle. "Send the message again," Kelthon said. His voice shook despite his efforts to stay calm. "Broadcast it on all frequencies. Someone must help us." The communication officer, a thin creature with 4 arms, worked at her console. "Sir, we have sent the distress call to over 10,000 star systems. Most do not even respond. Those that do say they cannot help." Kelthon closed his eyes. The coalition had been proud once. They had advanced technology. Their cities floated in space like jewels. Their people lived in peace for centuries. War was something they studied in history books, not something they practiced. That had been their mistake. The Devourers came from the void between galaxies. They brought weapons the coalition could not understand and tactics that made no sense. They did not follow the rules of civilized warfare. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we are receiving responses from the Outer Rim territories." "Any of them useful?" asked General Vorthak, the coalition's military leader. His red armor was scratched and dented from the recent battles. Like all of them, he looked exhausted. "Mostly no. The Crystalline Empire says they are too far away. The hive minds offer sympathy but no ships. The Machine Collective says this is not their concern." Kelthon felt hope dying in his chest. The coalition had 7 star systems when the war began. Now they had parts of 1. Billions of his people were dead. The survivors crowded into whatever ships could still fly. "Wait," the communications officer said. She pressed her upper hands to her headset. "I am getting something strange." "What kind of strange?" Vorthak asked. "A response from a system we have never contacted before. Grid reference, 47 Alpha 9. The databases show it as unexplored territory." Kelthon frowned. The coalition had mapped most of the galaxy. If there was an advanced civilization they had missed, it would be surprising. But these were desperate times. "What do they say?" he asked. The communications officer looked confused. "They say they received our message. They want to know more about the enemy. They are asking for military data and tactical information." "Do they offer help?" Vorthak demanded. "They say they are sending military advisors." Hope flickered in Kelthon's chest. Military advisors meant a civilization that understood war. Maybe they had experience the coalition lacked. "How many ships are they sending?" Vorthak asked. The communications officer paused. "They say 1 ship, with 30 advisors." The hope died as quickly as it had come. 30 beings could not make a difference in a war this size. The coalition needed fleets, not a handful of advisors. "Ask them about their technology," Vorthak said. "Maybe they have weapons we can copy." The reply came back quickly. "They say their technology is basic compared to ours. They fight with projectile weapons and chemical explosives." Silence filled the command center. Projectile weapons were primitive. The coalition had stopped using such things centuries ago. Energy weapons were faster, more accurate, more powerful. Chemical explosives were crude compared to their antimatter charges. "This is waste of time," Vorthak said. 30 primitives with Stone Age weapons cannot help us." But Kelthon was desperate enough to grasp at any hope. "Tell them to come. Give them our location. If they want to die with us, that is their choice." Over the next few days, the coalition's situation grew worse. 2 more planets fell to the Devourers. Refugee ships brought stories of entire cities being eaten alive. The creatures grew stronger with each world they consumed. Then the human ship arrived. It was ugly. That was Kelthon's first thought when he saw it on the viewing screen. The vessel looked like it had been built in a scrapyard. Its hull was gray metal covered in dents and scratches. Strange markings covered its sides. Weapon ports dotted its surface, but they looked small and basic. "That is their warship?" Vorthak asked in disbelief. "Apparently," the communications officer replied. "They are requesting permission to dock." The ship was much smaller than Coalition vessels. It looked more like a cargo hauler than a military craft. Kelthon wondered if these beings even understood what war meant. The airlock opened with a hiss. The first human stepped through, and Kelthon felt surprise. She was smaller than most Coalition species. Her skin was pale pink and dark hair was pulled back from her face. She wore simple gray clothing with strange symbols on the chest. "I am Colonel Sarah Chen," she said through the translation device. Her voice was calm and steady. "We received your distress call." Behind her came 29 other humans. They were all different sizes and colors, but they moved with the same controlled purpose. They carried basic equipment in simple bags. Nothing looked advanced or impressive. "Welcome to Coalition Command," Kelthon said, trying to hide his disappointment. "I am Ambassador Kelthon. We appreciate your response to our call for help." Colonel Chen looked around the command center. Her eyes took in the displays showing Devourer movements, the tactical maps, the damage reports. She said nothing for a long moment. "Show me your battle records," she finally said. For the next 6 hours, the humans studied Coalition military data. They watched videos of Devourer attacks. They examined weapon specifications and defensive strategies. They asked many questions, but they seemed more interested in Coalition tactics than Coalition technology. "Your ships are impressive," Colonel Chen told Vorthak. "Your weapons are powerful, your shields are strong." "But we keep losing," Vorthak replied bitterly. "Yes," Chen agreed. "You fight with honor, you follow rules, you try to minimize casualties. Of course, we are civilized beings." Chen's expression was unreadable. "The enemy does not follow your rules. They are savages." "No," Chen said quietly. "They are survivors. They do whatever works. That is why they win." Kelthon did not understand what she meant, but something in her voice made him feel cold. The humans spent 3 more days studying. They observed Coalition training exercises, they read historical military texts, they interviewed survivors from destroyed worlds. Then Colonel Chen called a meeting. "We can help you," she announced, "but you must be willing to fight differently." "How differently?" Vorthak asked. Chen's smile was thin and sharp. "You must be willing to become monsters." The command center fell silent. No one understood what she meant. They would learn soon enough. 3 days after Colonel Chen's arrival, the humans began their work. They did not ask for advanced weapons or powerful ships. Instead, they wanted something that confused the Coalition leaders. They wanted to see how the enemy thought. "Bring me a captured Devourer," Chen told General Vorthak. "We have never captured one alive," Vorthak replied. "They self-destruct when cornered. Then bring me pieces, wreckage, anything that shows how they operate." The Coalition had plenty of wreckage. The humans spent hours examining twisted metal and organic components. They studied the remains with simple tools that looked primitive compared to Coalition science equipment. But Chen and her team found things the alien scientists had missed. "Look at this," said Captain Martinez, one of Chen's officers. He pointed to scratch marks on a piece of armor plating. "These marks show they eat their own dead." "Cannibalism," Chen nodded. "They waste nothing. Every resource feeds the whole." Dr. Yamamoto, the team's medical expert, examined organic samples under a basic microscope. The biological parts are not random. They are specific organs from consumed species. The Devourers take the best parts from everything they eat. Kelthon watched the humans work and felt growing unease. They seemed to understand the enemy in ways that Coalition scientists could not. But their methods were disturbing. They spoke of the Devourers like they were studying a successful business rather than a threat to all life. "What have you learned?" he asked Chen. "Your enemy is not mindless," she replied. "They are efficient. They adapt. They learn from every victory. Most importantly, they do not think like you. What do you mean? Chen pulled up a holographic display showing Devourer attack patterns. You see chaos, random destruction, but look closer. She pointed to different battle sites. They always attack your strongest defenses first. This seems stupid, yes? Why not go around? Vorthak leaned forward. Exactly. They waste resources on our most defended positions. No, Chen said. They test you. Each attack teaches them how you fight. They learn your tactics, your weapons, your weaknesses. Then they adapt. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Every battle you fight makes them stronger, Chen continued. You have been training them to defeat you. Then how do we win? Kelthon asked desperately. You stop fighting like you, Chen said. You start fighting like them. Over the next week, the humans began training coalition forces in new methods. The lessons shocked the alien soldiers. Forget honor, Sergeant Williams told a group of coalition Marines. Honor gets you killed. Your job is to make the enemy die for their cause, not die for yours. The coalition soldiers looked horrified. Honor was central to their culture. Fighting without it seemed wrong. But we must follow the rules of warfare, protested Captain Zelthari, a young coalition officer. What rules? Williams asked. Show me where the Devourers signed these rules. Chen took over the lesson. Your rules exist to limit damage between civilized species. They assume both sides want to survive. The Devourers do not care about survival. They care about consumption. She activated a holographic battlefield. Watch how you fight. The display showed a typical coalition battle. Ships formed neat lines. They exchanged fire at long range. When shields failed, ships retreated to repair. Wounded were evacuated. Civilians were protected. Now watch how they fight. The Devourers swarmed like insects. They ignored damage to individual units. They targeted civilian evacuation ships. They used destroyed vessels as weapons, ramming them into coalition formations. They showed no mercy and expected none. You fight to protect, Chen explained. They fight to consume. These are not the same thing. So what do you suggest? Vorthak asked. Chen's smile was cold. We teach you to think like predators. The first human training exercise made coalition soldiers sick. Chen had them attack a mock civilian transport filled with training dummies. The aliens hesitated, unable to fire on non-combatants even in a simulation. Again, Chen ordered. The enemy will not hesitate. If you do, you lose. This is wrong, Captain Zelthari said, his hands shaking. We protect civilians. We do not target them. You protect them by winning, Chen replied. Sometimes winning requires terrible choices. She changed the simulation. Now the civilian transport was heading toward a coalition base filled with refugees. It had been captured by Devourers and loaded with explosives. Stop that ship, Chen ordered. The coalition soldiers froze. Destroying the transport would save thousands but kill hundreds of innocent captives. Choose, Chen said quietly. Save the few or save the many. The aliens could not make the choice. Chen took control and destroyed the transport herself. The simulation ended with the base saved but the captives dead. This is what command means, she told the silent room. Making choices that haunt you so others can live. The humans introduced other concepts that disturbed the coalition. They taught soldiers to use enemy tactics against them. They showed how to make the Devourer's size work against them. They explained psychological warfare. Fear is a weapon, explained Lieutenant Thompson during a strategy session. Make the enemy afraid and they make mistakes. But Devourers do not feel fear, Vorthak protested. Everything feels fear, Thompson replied. Even machines fear being turned off. Find what they fear and use it. The humans had coalition engineers study Devourer wreckage differently. Instead of trying to understand how it worked, they looked for ways to make it fail. Do not build better shields, Chen told the engineering teams. Build weapons that turn their shields against them. Dr. Petrov, a human engineer, showed them how to modify coalition energy weapons. Your beams are too clean, too precise. Add interference patterns. Make them unpredictable. But that reduces accuracy, protested the lead coalition engineer. Accuracy is overrated, Petrov said. Chaos is underrated. A beam that bounces randomly inside their hull will do more damage than one that hits cleanly. Slowly, the coalition began to understand. The humans were not teaching them new technology. They were teaching them new ways of thinking, ways that felt alien and disturbing. You want us to become like them, Kelthon said to Chen during a private meeting. No, Chen replied. I want you to become like us. What is the difference? Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but frightening. The Devourers consume because it is their nature. Humans choose to consume. We can turn it on and off. We can be civilized when we want to be and savage when we need to be. That choice makes us more dangerous than they are. Kelthon felt a chill run down his spine. What are you? Survivors, Chen said simply. We have been at war with ourselves for thousands of years. We have learned every possible way to kill. Now we will teach you. The first real test came sooner than expected. Devourer scouts entered the system, heading for the last coalition stronghold. According to all previous patterns, they would probe the defenses, test the responses, then retreat to plan a major attack. Chen had other ideas. Ambush them, she told Vorthak. Hit them before they expect it. Use everything you have learned. But we do not have enough ships for a direct assault, Vorthak protested. Then do not assault directly, Chen replied. Think like a human. The coalition fleet hid behind the system's asteroid belt. When the Devourer scouts arrived, they found only empty space and weak defensive signals. They moved in to investigate. The trap was perfect. Coalition ships emerged from hiding and struck with coordinated precision. But they did not fight like before. They used the humans' new tactics. Coalition fighters ignored individual targets and focused fire on critical systems. They rammed damaged Devourer ships instead of trying to capture them. When enemy vessels tried to retreat, coalition forces pursued and destroyed them completely. For the first time in 3 years, no Devourer ship escaped a coalition engagement. But the victory felt hollow. The coalition had won by abandoning everything they believed about honorable warfare. They had become something else, something more like their human teachers. Chen watched the battle reports with satisfaction. Good, she said. You are learning. But Kelthon noticed something in her eyes that made him afraid. The humans were not just teaching the coalition to fight differently. They were changing them into something they might not be able to change back from. The main Devourer fleet arrived 2 weeks later. It was massive beyond anything the coalition had ever seen. Thousands of biomechanical ships darkened the space around their last star system. The creatures had grown fat on consumed worlds, their vessels now larger and more terrible than before. Ambassador Kelthon stood in the command center, watching the enemy approach. Beside him, Colonel Chen studied the tactical displays with calm interest. Her human team worked at their stations, running calculations on primitive-looking computers. 60,000 enemy vessels, reported General Vorthak. His voice was steady, but fear showed in his eyes. Our fleet has 800 ships remaining. 75-1 odds, Chen noted without emotion. Challenging but manageable. Kelthon stared at her. Manageable? They outnumber us almost 100-1. Numbers are not everything, Chen replied. Ask any virus how it defeats a body millions of times larger. She turned to her team. Status report. Captain Martinez looked up from his console. Phase 1 preparations complete. All coalition ships have been modified with our weapons upgrades. Crews have completed psychological warfare training. Phase 2? Chen asked. Decoy installations are in place. False communication networks are active. The enemy will see what we want them to see. Dr. Yamamoto added her report. Biological agents are ready for deployment. Based on Devourer physiology, they should cause significant internal damage. Kelthon felt sick. The humans had spent weeks preparing for this battle, but their methods seemed wrong. They had turned coalition medical knowledge into biological weapons. They had built fake bases to confuse the enemy. They had even prepared to sacrifice their own ships as weapons. This is not how civilized beings fight, he said. Chen's expression was patient but cold. Civilized beings are dead beings when facing an enemy like this. The Devourer fleet moved into attack formation. They came forward in the same pattern they always used, a massive wave designed to overwhelm through pure force. The coalition had never been able to stop such attacks before. This time was different. Execute Phase 1, Chen ordered. The coalition fleet did not meet the enemy head-on. Instead, they scattered into small groups and retreated toward the inner system. To the Devourers, it looked like panic. Like prey running in fear, the enemy followed, breaking their formation to pursue individual coalition ships. They moved eagerly, expecting easy victories. Now, Chen said quietly, hidden weapons platforms activated throughout the system. They were not the clean energy weapons the Coalition normally used. These were human-designed devices that fired crude projectiles at enormous speed. Chunks of metal accelerated to nearly light speed struck devourer ships like hammer blows. The enemy vessels were built to resist energy weapons. They were not prepared for simple kinetic impacts. Ships that could survive antimatter explosions were torn apart by flying rocks. But that was only the beginning. Phase 2, Chen announced. Coalition ships stopped running and turned to fight. But they did not engage in the formal ship-to-ship combat the Devourers expected. Instead, they swarmed like insects using tactics learned from studying the enemy. Damaged Coalition vessels rammed into enemy ships instead of retreating. Fighters ignored their own safety to strike critical systems. When Devourer ships tried to consume disabled Coalition vessels, they found them rigged with explosives. The battle became chaos. The Devourers had learned to fight the old Coalition, honorable, predictable, limited. They did not know how to fight an enemy that used their own tactics against them. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Thompson, "enemy communication networks are down. They cannot coordinate between ships." Chen nodded. "Psychological warfare phase? Active. We are broadcasting the recordings on all frequencies." Kelthon watched the psychological weapon in action and felt horror. The humans had recorded the sounds of Devourer ships being destroyed. They mixed these sounds with Coalition surrender messages, creating audio that suggested the Devourers were consuming each other. The enemy ships began to hesitate. Some fired on their own allies, confused by the false signals. Others broke formation entirely, unable to tell friend from foe. "This is monstrous," Kelthon whispered. "Yes," Chen agreed. "But it works." The tide of battle turned. For the first time since the war began, Devourer ships were retreating. But Chen was not finished. "Phase 3, she ordered. Biological deployment." Coalition medical ships moved forward, releasing clouds of engineered bacteria into space. The organisms were designed by human and Coalition scientists working together. They would eat the organic components that the Devourers used to control their biomechanical ships. Within hours, enemy vessels began to malfunction as their biological systems died. Ships that had seemed unstoppable were reduced to drifting metal hulks. But the humans had one more surprise. "Final phase," Chen announced. "Asset denial." The remaining Coalition ships began destroying everything in the system. Planets, moons, space stations, resource depots. Everything that the Devourers could potentially consume was turned to ash. "You are destroying our own worlds," Forthek protested. "Dead worlds cannot feed the enemy," Chen replied coldly. "We leave them nothing to gain from this victory." The Devourer fleet found itself surrounded by destruction with nothing left to consume. Their numbers were reduced by half, their ships were malfunctioning, and their expected feast had turned to poison. For the first time in the war, the Devourers retreated. The Coalition had won their first major victory. But as Kelthon looked around the command center, he realized the cost was higher than just ships and planets. His people had changed. Coalition officers spoke in cold, calculating terms about acceptable casualties. They discussed biological weapons like normal tools. They planned future battles using tactics that would have horrified them months ago. "What have we become?" he asked Chen. "Winners," she replied. "The question is whether you can live with what winning requires." Captain Zelthari approached them, his face pale but determined. "Colonel Chen, I have been thinking about our next move. If we modify the biological agents slightly, we could make them transmissible between Devourer ships. We could create a plague that would spread through their entire species." Chen nodded approvingly. "Good thinking, Captain. What would you need to make it happen?" Kelthon listened to them discuss genocide as casually as they might discuss dinner plans. The young Coalition officer who had once refused to target civilians now spoke of exterminating an entire species. "This is what you wanted." Kelthon said to Chen, "You have turned us into killers." "I have turned you into survivors," Chen corrected. "The Devourers forced this choice. Be consumed or become consumers. There is no middle ground, but at what cost?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "The same cost humans paid long ago. We learned that survival sometimes requires becoming the monster. The difference is, we learned to control the monster instead of letting it control us." Dr. Yamamoto joined their conversation. "Ambassador, with respect, your people chose this path when they called for help. We are simply showing you how to walk it. We asked for military aid, not transformation into something alien." War transforms everyone, Chen said. The only choice is whether you control the transformation or it controls you. She gestured to the tactical displays showing their victory. Your people are alive because they learned to fight like their enemies. The alternative was extinction. Kelthon knew she was right, but the knowledge felt like poison in his mind. The coalition had saved itself by destroying what it used to be. Over the following days, reports came in from across the system. The Devourer retreat was complete. For the first time in 3 years, coalition space was free of the enemy. But the celebrations felt hollow. The victory had come at a price that went beyond ships and lives. The coalition had won by becoming something their ancestors would not recognize. What happens now? Kelthon asked Chen as they watched cleanup operations. Now you decide what kind of species you want to be, she replied. You have the tools to survive in a hostile galaxy. How you use them is up to you. And if we choose to return to our old ways, Chen's smile was sad but knowing. You cannot unknow what you now know. You cannot unfeel what you have felt. The monster is part of you now. The question is whether you feed it or starve it. She paused, looking out at the debris field that had once been a devourer fleet. But remember, Ambassador, somewhere out there are other enemies, other threats to your people's survival. When they come, you will make the same choice again. Kelthon realized with growing horror that she was right. The humans had not just taught them to fight, they had taught them to think like predators, and predators were always hunting. 6 months after the victory over the Devourers, Ambassador Kelthon barely recognized his own people. The coalition had rebuilt their fleets and expanded their territory, but something fundamental had changed in how they saw the galaxy. Colonel Chen stood before a gathering of coalition military leaders in what used to be a peaceful conference hall. Now it looked more like a war room, with tactical displays covering every wall and officers discussing battle strategies with frightening enthusiasm. The hegemony of Stel has been monitoring our territory, reported Captain Zelthari. The young officer who once hesitated to fire on training dummies now spoke casually about preemptive strikes. Their scout ships have been seen near our outer colonies. Intentions? Chen asked. Unknown, but they have been asking other species about our military capabilities. They seem concerned about our expansion into former Devourer space. General Vorthak leaned forward. He wore new armor now, darker and more aggressive looking than his old ceremonial gear. Should we consider them a threat? Chen turned to study a holographic map of local space. The coalition's territory had grown significantly since the war ended. They had claimed several star systems that the Devourers had consumed, rebuilding them with a mixture of coalition and human technology. What do you think, Captain Zelthari? Chen asked. The young coalition officer considered the question with a coldness that would have shocked his former self. The hegemony controls resources we need for our expansion. Their military is traditional, similar to our old fighting methods. If they oppose us, they will lose. Kelthon felt a chill run down his spine. They were talking about attacking another civilization simply because it might become inconvenient. This was exactly what the Devourers had done. We cannot attack the hegemony without cause, he protested. They have done nothing wrong. They exist in our path, Vorthak replied matter-of-factly. That is cause enough. This is madness, Kelthon said. We are becoming the very thing we fought against. Chen's expression was patient but firm. No, Ambassador. You are becoming what you need to be to survive in a hostile galaxy. She activated new displays showing intelligence reports from across the region. While you were celebrating victory, we continued our work. Do you want to know what we found? The displays showed star maps marked with different colored zones. Red areas indicated aggressive species. Yellow showed potential threats. Green marked peaceful civilizations. There was very little green. The galaxy is not a peaceful place, Chen explained. The coalition existed in a small bubble of civilized space. The Devourers were just the beginning. Dr. Yamamoto joined the briefing, her medical expertise now focused on developing biological weapons. We have identified 17 species within 50 light-years that pose potential threats. 12 of them have military capabilities superior to the old coalition, but inferior to the new coalition, Captain Martinez added. He had been promoted to major and now commanded coalition special operations. Our modified tactics give us significant advantages. Kelthon stared at the displays in growing horror. The humans had not just defeated the Devourers. They had turned the Coalition into a military machine designed to identify and eliminate threats across the galaxy. "This information," he said slowly. "How did you gather it?" Chen and her team exchanged glances. "Standard intelligence operations," she replied. "What does that mean?" Dr. Petrov, the human engineer, pulled up technical specifications. "We have established monitoring stations throughout the region. We intercept communications, analyze military deployments, and assess threat levels." "You mean we are spying on everyone?" "We are protecting ourselves," Vorthak corrected. "Knowledge is survival." Kelthan realized that human influence had spread far beyond military tactics. The Coalition now maintained spy networks, assassination teams, and false flag operations throughout their region of space. They had become the kind of civilization they used to fear. "The hegemony of Stel is planning something," Captain Zelthari reported, reading from a new intelligence brief. "Their military has been conducting exercises near our border. They are either preparing to attack or defend." "Which do you recommend?" Chen asked. "Attack," Zelthari replied without hesitation. "If we wait for them to act first, we lose the advantage of surprise." "I agree," said Vorthak. "We should strike before they can coordinate with other potential enemies." Kelthan watched his people plan an unprovoked war and felt sick. "This is wrong. We are supposed to be better than this." "Better is a luxury," Chen said quietly. "Dead civilizations cannot afford luxuries." She brought up historical files from the Coalition's own databases. "Your people lived in peace for centuries because you were protected. Protected by distance, by luck, by the ignorance of your enemies. That protection is gone now." The displays showed the harsh reality of galactic politics. Thousands of species competed for resources, territory, and survival. Those that remained peaceful either hid in remote regions or were conquered by more aggressive neighbors. "The Devourers taught you the first lesson," Chen continued. "Strength matters more than righteousness. We are teaching you the second lesson. Act first or be acted upon." Over the following weeks, the Coalition prepared for war against the hegemony, but their preparations were unlike anything they had done before. They used human-taught methods that would have horrified their former selves. Coalition intelligence officers infiltrated hegemony space and sabotaged key installations. They spread false information to create confusion among enemy forces. They even assassinated several hegemony military leaders using methods that could not be traced back to the Coalition. "Preliminary operations are complete," Major Martinez reported. "Enemy communication networks are compromised. Their fleet coordination is severely degraded." "Biological agents?" Chen asked. Dr. Yamamoto nodded. "Deployed in their primary shipyards. The organisms will consume their bioorganic ship components over the next few weeks. They will blame equipment failures rather than enemy action." Kelthon listened to these reports with growing despair. The Coalition was no longer just planning to attack the hegemony. They were destroying it from within using methods that violated every principle of civilized warfare. "This is genocide," he said. "This is efficiency," Vorthak corrected. "Why waste Coalition lives in direct battle when we can achieve victory through superior strategy?" The final attack came 3 months later. The hegemony's fleets were crippled before the fighting even began. Their ships suffered mysterious malfunctions. Their communication systems failed at critical moments. Their military leadership was dead or missing. When Coalition forces finally moved openly against hegemony territory, the resistance was minimal. What should have been a major interstellar war became a series of small skirmishes. The hegemony surrendered within weeks, but the victory felt hollow to Kelthon. They had won through deception, sabotage, and murder. The methods were effective, but they had transformed the Coalition into something unrecognizable. "Congratulations," Chen told the Coalition leadership after the surrender ceremony. "You have successfully defended your territory and expanded your resources." "We have destroyed a peaceful civilization," Kelthon replied. "You have eliminated a potential threat," Chen corrected. "The hegemony was already planning military action against you. We simply acted first." She showed him intercepted hegemony communications that proved their hostile intentions. The evidence was overwhelming. The Coalition's attack had been justified by any reasonable standard, but Kelthon no longer trusted what seemed reasonable. "Did you manipulate them into planning that attack?" he asked. Chen's expression remained neutral. "Does it matter?" The threat was real regardless of its origin. That was when Kelthon understood the true horror of what had happened. The humans had not just taught the Coalition to fight differently. They had taught them to think like predators who created their own prey. "What are you?" he asked Chen in a private meeting later that day. "We are what you are becoming," she replied. "A species that survives because it refuses to be victims. But you create the very threats you claim to fight against." Chen nodded. "Sometimes. Other times, the threats are real from the beginning. The galaxy is full of genuine monsters, Ambassador. We simply make sure we are the most dangerous monsters in any given situation. And if everyone thinks like that, then everyone learns to be very polite to each other," Chen said with a cold smile. "Fear creates its own peace." Kelthon realized that the humans had not come to save the Coalition from the Devourers. They had come to transform the Coalition into something like themselves. Something that could survive in a galaxy where only predators lived long enough to have children. The terrifying part was that it was working. The Coalition was stronger, safer, and more successful than it had ever been before. But they were no longer the same species that had sent out that desperate cry for help. They had become something else entirely. 2 years after the first human ship arrived, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of her new flagship. The vessel was a masterpiece of combined human and Coalition technology. Its weapons could destroy planets. Its defenses could withstand the firepower of entire fleets. Most importantly, it carried the most dangerous cargo in the galaxy: human ideas. The ship orbited New Zephyr, the Coalition's new capital world. Below, massive construction projects reshaped the planet's surface. Military academies rose like mountains. Weapons factories stretched beyond the horizon. The peaceful cities that once defined Coalition civilization had been replaced by something far more practical. Ambassador Kelthon joined Chen on the observation deck. He looked older now, worn down by the weight of what his people had become. His once bright blue skin had faded to a dull gray. The optimism that had once defined him was gone. "Another message," he said, handing Chen a datapad. "The Crimson Syndicate is requesting human military advisors." Chen read the message with interest. The Syndicate controlled 40 star systems and had been fighting a losing war against something called the Void Collective. Their plea sounded familiar. Desperate beings asking for help against an unstoppable enemy. "What do you think?" Chen asked. "I think you already know what you are going to do," Kelthon replied bitterly. Chen smiled. Over the past 2 years, she had received over 300 similar requests. Word had spread across the galaxy about the Coalition's impossible victory over the Devourers. Other species wanted to learn the secrets of human warfare. "Captain Torres," Chen called to her communications officer, "send a reply to the Syndicate. We will send military advisors." "How many ships, sir?" Torres asked. "1 ship, 30 advisors. Standard package." Kelthon watched this exchange with sick familiarity. The humans had turned assistance into a routine operation. They had teams ready to deploy across the galaxy, each one carrying the same poisonous gift: the knowledge of how to survive by becoming monsters. "Do you know what they call us now?" Kelthon asked. "What?" "The galaxy calls us the Human Coalition. Not the Zephyrian Coalition, not even the new Coalition. They think we are just another human colony." Chen considered this. Are they wrong? The question hung in the air like a weapon. Kelthon looked down at the planet below and tried to find traces of his old civilization. The art galleries were gone, replaced by strategic planning centers. The philosophy schools had become intelligence training facilities. Even the children learned mathematics through weapons calculations. "We still exist," he said weakly. "Yes," Chen agreed. "You still exist." That was the point. She gestured to displays showing Coalition territory. It had grown enormously since the war with the Devourers. Dozens of star systems now flew Coalition flags. Hundreds of species had either joined voluntarily or been absorbed through various forms of pressure. "Your people control more space than they ever did," Chen pointed out. "They are safer than they have ever been. They will survive for thousands of years because of the choices they made." "But are they still my people?" Chen turned to study his reflection in the transparent aluminum window. "What defines a people, Ambassador? Their beliefs? Their territory? Their genetics? Their survival? Their values," Kelthon replied. "The things they will not compromise." "Then your people died the day the Devourers arrived," Chen said bluntly. "What exists now is what chose to live instead of maintaining perfect values." The brutal honesty hit Kelthon like a physical blow, but he could not argue with it. The coalition that had sent out that desperate plea for help was gone. What remained was something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. "We have become you," he said. "No," Chen corrected. "You have become what we taught you to become. There is a difference." She brought up new intelligence reports on her personal display. "The galaxy is changing, Ambassador. Our methods spread from species to species. Civilizations that once fought with honor now use deception and biological warfare. Everyone is learning to think like predators." The reports painted a picture of transformation on a galactic scale. Peaceful species were militarizing. Democratic governments were becoming autocratic. Scientific research was focusing on weapons development. "You did this," Kelthon accused. "We accelerated what was already happening," Chen replied. "The Devourers proved that pure pacifism leads to extinction. We simply taught other species how to avoid that fate." Captain Torres approached with another report. "Admiral, we are receiving multiple requests for human advisors. The Titanium Republic, the Hive Worlds, the Crystal Empire, they all want to hire our teams." "And the requests for direct military intervention?" Chen asked. 17 this month. The Void Collective has expanded its operations. Several civilizations are offering significant compensation for human fleet support. Chen nodded. The humans had become the galaxy's premier military contractors. Their knowledge of warfare was unmatched. Their results were undeniable. Every species that hired human advisors survived their conflicts, but they also changed into something resembling humanity. "There is something else," Torres added. "Long-range scanners have detected movement in the outer rim. Something big." Chen's expression grew serious. "Show me." The holographic display revealed disturbing intelligence. Massive fleets were moving through unexplored space toward the galaxy's inhabited regions. The ships were unlike anything in the databases. Organic constructs the size of moons with technology that defied analysis. "The Eternal Swarm," Chen read from the identification files. "They consume entire galactic clusters." Kelthon felt familiar dread settling into his chest. The pattern was repeating. A new threat was emerging, one that made the Devourers look small by comparison. "How long before they reach inhabited space?" he asked. 2 years, Torres replied. "Maybe less if they accelerate." Chen studied the data with professional interest. "They make the Devourers look like amateurs. This will require a coordinated response from multiple civilizations." "You mean it will require everyone to think like humans?" Kelthon said. "Yes," Chen agreed without shame. "It will require the entire galaxy to embrace what you call monstrous in order to survive something genuinely monstrous." She began making calculations on her personal computer. "We will need to coordinate with all our client species. The Coalition, the Syndicate, the Republic. Everyone who has learned our methods. Together they might be strong enough. And if they are not," Chen's smile was cold and practical, "then we teach them to be stronger." Over the following months, the galaxy transformed at an unprecedented pace. Human military advisors spread across hundreds of star systems. Species that had maintained peaceful traditions for millennia began building weapons of mass destruction. Entire civilizations restructured themselves around military efficiency. The change was not voluntary. The approaching Eternal Swarm gave everyone a simple choice: adapt or be consumed. Most chose adaptation, but adaptation meant becoming something like humanity. Kelthon watched this transformation from his position in the coalition government. His title was still ambassador, but his real function was closer to that of a provincial governor in a human empire. He implemented policies created by human advisors and enforced decisions made by human-trained coalition officers. "The metamorphosis is nearly complete," he told Chen during one of their regular meetings. "What metamorphosis?" she asked. "The galaxy is becoming human, not genetically but culturally. Psychologically, everyone thinks like you now." Chen considered this observation. "Is that a bad thing?" "It is a sad thing," Kelthon replied. "There was beauty in diversity, art in different ways of thinking. Now everyone solves problems the same way, through violence and deception. But everyone survives," Chen pointed out. "Beauty is meaningless if no one lives to appreciate it." The first contact with the Eternal Swarm came 18 months later. The encounter was brief and devastating. An entire star system was consumed in hours. The defending fleets using traditional tactics were swept aside like insects. But the galaxy was ready with a different response. Human-trained civilizations did not meet the swarm in honorable battle. Instead, they used everything humanity had taught them about warfare. They poisoned worlds before the swarm could consume them. They turned entire solar systems into weapons. They sacrificed millions to save billions. The war that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was fought with weapons that turned planets into bombs and strategies that treated entire species as expendable resources. Honor died completely. Mercy became extinct. Only victory mattered and humanity won, not just for Earth but for every species they had taught to think like predators. When the eternal swarm finally retreated to the void between galaxies, they left behind a changed universe. The galaxy belonged to creatures that thought like humans, fought like humans, and survived like humans. Admiral Chen stood once again on her observation deck, looking out at a galaxy that bore little resemblance to the one that had first called for help. It was harder now, colder, more practical, but it was alive. No more desperate cries for help, she told Kelthon. No more innocent civilizations being consumed by forces they cannot understand. Everyone knows how to fight now. Everyone knows how to be monsters, Kelthon corrected. Yes, Chen agreed. And monsters survive while saints become extinct.